Good morning, guys, and welcome to this Amazon S3 class. In this class, we are going to learn what's the S3, and how to create the buckets, what's the pricing tiers, and which storage we have to choose, and which storage is the best choice for that particular scenario. So we are going to deep down into this S3 in this video, and let's continue. So Amazon S3 is one of the first service introduced by the Amazon. So you can understand it's around 2004 or 5. And S3, it's provided either the developers or whether you are the IT team, in the IT infrastructure team. It provides the secure, durable, and the highly scalable cloud storage. It's basically S3 is nothing but the 3S, and one S for simple, second is S for the uh, storage, and third S for the services. So it's the simple storage services in AWS cloud. So it provide us the cloud storage. So and it's easy to use as an object. It's an object storage and with a simple web service interface, so that you can use to store and retrieve any amount of data from anywhere in the world, because it gives you the unlimited storage capability. However, we have capping here for one object. The one object can be up to 5 TB, but you can upload unlimited size of data or the objects into S3. S3, it also allows you to pay only for the storage that you actually use. So let's say you are using only 1 GB storage in S3, then you have to pay only for the S3, and you are not paying for other than 1 GB. And S3 is can be used alone. I mean, just S3, you can use just S3 for your cloud storage, or even you can use S3 with conjunction with some other AWS services as well. So let's just take an example how about the Amazon S3. It serves as the durable target storage for the Amazon Kinesis and the Elastic MapReduce and some other services, which is being used as the storage for Amazon and Elastic Block Store, like the EBS and Relay RDS services snapshots. Let's say if you are taking some snapshots, or all the snapshots stored into the S3 only. And it's Amazon. It's so flexible, so highly integrated, and so commonly used. So if I talk about how what some common use cases for this S3, so we use this S3 exact same as if you have in your infrastructure. Let's say you have the SAN devices, 5 TB storage, or 100 TB storage SAN devices, or you have the NAS in your storage, and you use that particular devices into your infrastructure to store your backups, store your snapshots, stores your database backups and your files. And here in S3, you can also store the content, media storage, software storage, and you can also use S3 for your big data analytics. You can even host the static website, host the static website, but you cannot host the dynamic website. But if you just where you need the users input, then you need to use some other. In Amazon S3, it's also offers a range of storage classes, and it's designed for the various the generic use cases, like the general purpose and infrequent access and archive your data. So it's used in the broad scenarios. Let's say the is Amazon S3 is standard, so you can use for the general purpose. For infrequent access, you can use the S3 infrequent access storage if you have the data which is not going to be used very frequently, and but you need to keep those data for, let's say, the few hours because of some compliance or the government policy or the client requirements. Then you can use the S3 Glacier. So we will look into it what they are, and in the next couple of slides, so it will make sense to you. So just don't worry if it doesn't make sense what the Glacier and what's the S3 infrequent access. Even S3 S3 it's also offer the configurable life cycle policies. So by using those life cycle policies, you can have your data automatically migrate to the most appropriate storage class. You don't need to be just, let's say you are using the S3 standards, and you have apply the life cycle policies, and there are few data which is not being used by the very frequently, and some of the data which is used very frequently. So the life cycle policy that's going to migrate your unfrequent, the infrequent data into the most suitable storage, so that it will bring your cost down, and you don't need to do any manual tasks. So that's going to be done by the life cycle policy itself. Okay, so we will talk about the type of this storage in the next slides, but before that, let's move. So the S3, it's the cloud object storage. It's not the block level storage. It's the object level storage. Keep in mind, if there is questions like the what is the object level storage in the class, that's the S3. But if there is a question like the block level storage, then we have the other option, that's the EBS, elastic block storage, that's going to be used to install your the operating system and other high throughput applications. But for S3, it's not going to be used to install your like the database or your install your operating system on S3. You can't do them. So Amazon S3 bucket contains both data and the metadata. Object resides in container they call the buckets, and each object is defined by a unique user specified key that's called the file name. Buckets are simple flat folders. You just don't confuse with the bucket name. It's just a folder as we have into our systems. So we create the folders, then we put the files into them. So exact same, we create the buckets and then we upload the folder of files into the buckets. And you can have multiple buckets, but you cannot have a sub bucket within a bucket. So you cannot create the buckets under one another bucket. So you cannot mount a bucket or open an object or install an operating system on Amazon S3, or you cannot even run the database on it. Okay, and with Amazon S3, you don't even have to worry about devices or file storage limit and the capacity planning. And a single bucket can store an unlimited number of files. So you can create any number of files into the your S3 buckets, into even a single buckets. So you can also don't need to worry about the data durability and the replications across availability zone. S3 objects are automatically replicated on multiple devices in multiple facilities within a region. It's not cross region, but the within a region. The same with scalability. If your request rate grows steadily, Amazon S3 automatically partitions bucket to support very high request rate and simultaneous access by many clients. So in our the traditional IT environment, we have usually two kinds of the storage. Let's say one is the block storage and another one is the file storage. So block storage that's operate at the lower level, and the raw storage device level, which manage the data as a set of numbered fixed size block, while the file storage operate at the higher level and the operating system level and manage data as a named hierarchy of files and the folders. A block and the file storage are often accessed over a network in the form of a SAN for block storage using some protocols. You can use either the iSCSI or the Fiverr channel or the NAS file server, and using protocols, like say the common internet file system, that's the CIFS or the NFS. However, S3 is an object storage, and it's quite different than what I talk about the block storage and the file storage in our traditional infrastructure. Okay, so you just it's very easy to think Amazon S3 is just a file. You just consider it as a file and then key as the file name. If I'm talking about the key, that's mean the file name. So it will be easy to remember. However, you should keep in mind that S3 is not a traditional file system, and it differs in a significant way. So in S3, you get an object or put an object, so operating on the whole object at once instead of incrementally updating portions of the objects as you would with a file. So you cannot mount a bucket, open an object, install an operating system on it. Okay, so instead of a file system, S3 is highly durable and highly scalable object storage that is optimized for reads and is built with an intentionally minimalistic feature set. So it provides a simple and robust abstraction for file storage that frees you from many underlying details that you normally do have to deal you have to deal with in your traditional storage. So that's the how you can use your S3 and how it's different than your traditional storage into your infrastructure. However, if you need traditional block or the file storage in addition to your S3 storage, AWS provides such options also. So like the Amazon EBS service provides the block level storage for the Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud. So we will look into it into our EC2 session. And Amazon EFS, we called it the Elastic File System, which provides the network attached shared file storage using the NFS version for protocol in AWS infrastructure. Let's talk about the S3 pricing tier. So what's make you cost for S3? So it costs you the storage which is going to be used is whatever storage you going to be consuming S3. That's the storage will be cost you. Other than you don't need to pay. And second, that's the request to your data retrievals. That's also going to cost you. Let's say you have put the 500 GB data into your S3 buckets, but you are going to retrieve the data only the 1 GB, then you have to pay only the 1 GB data retrieval cost. Another one, the third one is the data transfer. Fourth is the management and the replications. If you are going to replicate the data, then also it's going to cost you. And we have different types of the tiers based on the scenarios, based on your requirements. You can choose the best suited the storage, and that's also going into your exam also. And they will ask you which is the best suitable storage for your for this particular scenario. So first is the S3 standard. It's going to be used for the generic purpose, and S3 is the most the expensive storage also and second one will be the it's the S3 IA, S3 infrequent access. And if you have the data which is not going to be frequently used by your user, then use the S3 IA. It's slightly cheaper than standard. Then you can use the S3 one zone infrequent access storage. Also, if you are not if you don't care about your data loss, then you can choose this S3 one zone IA. It's again much slightly cheaper than the second level S3 infrequent access. We have the S3 intelligence steering. It's going to be move your data from one storage to the different storage based on your policies. So it's the intelligent tiering. Then the glacier basically used for the archiving the data to keep the data for long years, but you don't require data very frequently, and you can wait to retrieve the data. Let's say if you require the data to provide to your user, so you put the request to Amazon and they will provide you the data in next couple of hours, so you have to wait. And another six one is the Glacier Deep Archive. It's the next version of Glacier. Here you need to it's the waiting time is slightly the higher than Glacier to retrieve the data, but it's cheaper also than S3 Glacier. So now you understand how many types of S3 tiering is available in S3. What's the pricing you are going to pay for which scenario? And now let's talk about little bit about S3. What's the S3 is, because you have already understanding of some key difference between your IT traditional block storage and your file storage versus S3 storage. So we will let's explore now S3. So next is the bucket. What is the bucket? So bucket is nothing but a container or the web folder for objects stored in your S3. Every S3 object is contained inside a bucket. You cannot put your objects outside the bucket. First, you have to create the buckets into your Amazon S3. And buckets form it's the top level namespace for any Amazon S3, and the bucket names are the global. Just keep in mind bucket name are global. However, S3 is the region based. You have to create the buckets into your regions to access the data, but bucket name it must be unique globally. I mean globally means not into your accounts only, but the globally in Amazon itself. It's exactly same. You can think about the DNS name or your domain name. Let's say it cannot be the duplicate domain name, same domain name for your websites. If you are going to register your domain name, so then it will search out whether the domain name exists or it's going to be used by some other parties or not. So if it's available, then it's will be provided to you. So exact same case with bucket name here. So just keep in mind. And bucket name, it can contain up to 63 lowercase letters, numbers, hyphens, and periods. And you can create and use the multiple bucket also. You can have up to 100 per accounts by default, but it's not the hard limit. You can make the changes, but it's up to 100 per accounts. You can create the buckets into your AWS. Sorry. So it is also the best practice to use the bucket names exact same as your domain name. So and to conform to the rules for DNS name. This means yours that your bucket names are your own and can be used in your all regions and can host your static website as well. So you don't have to spare create the bucket names a bit different and to host the static websites with different names. So with your domain name. So that's you should use your bucket name as same as your DNS name. Though it's not the mandatory, but it's the recommended and the best practice if you can do it. Another one is the reason. So even though the namespace for Amazon S3 bucket is a global, but each Amazon S3 bucket created in a specific region that you are going to choose. It's not be cannot access into your the different regions. But yeah, again, you need to keep in mind that Amazon bucket name must be unique globally. However, it's not a global service, it's a region based service. Also, keep in mind. So, this lets you control where your data is stored, and you can create and use the bucket that are located close to a particular set of end users or your customers in order to minimize the latency or located in a particular region to satisfy data locality and sovereignty concerns. So you also keep in mind it's also going to be used to satisfy the data locality and the sovereignty. Okay, and next is the objects. Objects are the entities, or you can say the file is which you are going to store into your S3 buckets. An object can store virtually any kind of data in any format. Your S3 buckets it's not going to scan your objects, so it doesn't care about what type of objects you are storing into your S3 buckets. So and objects can be ranged in size from 0 bytes to up to 5 TB. It's range for only the one object. It's not for the whole object. You can store the unlimited objects in the size into your S3 bucket, but one object can be up to 5 TB in size. And a single bucket can store the unlimited number of objects. So each object consists of data and the metadata. So we have the system, the metadata. So if you know that metadata is the data about the data. And there are basically two types of the metadata. One is the system metadata, and another one is the user metadata. So, what is the system metadata? So, system metadata is created and used by S3 itself. It's not going to be created or used by yourself. It's created by and taken care by S3 only, and it includes things like the date last modified, object size, MD5 digest, and HTTP content type. And user metadata is the optional, and it can only be specified at the time an object is created. You cannot going to be specified after creation of the objects. You have to be specify user metadata during only object creation. So you can use your the metadata to tag your data with attributes that are meaningful to you. So it's depend how you are going to use. And another one is the key. Another object, that's the key. Every object stored in S3 bucket is identified by a unique identifier called a name, called a key. Exact same, you cannot have the two files with the same name into your folders. You must have, let's say, the folder, then second one you can keep the folder 1, folder 2, folder 3, exact same. That's the key in S3. So you cannot have the two folders with the name of folder in the same parent folder, right? You cannot have, I mean, the files. So that's how it's the exact same, so you don't get confused what's the key. It's just the file name. So key must be unique within a single bucket, but you can, if you have the multiple buckets exact same, let's say you have the two folders, folder 1, folder 2, and under the folder 1 you may have the file 1, file 2, file 3, and exact same file 1, file 2, file 3 into your folder 2. So exact same you can have the in the the file 1, file 2, file 3 in the bucket 1, and the file 1, file 2, file 3 into the bucket 2. So you can have uh, you can have the files with the same name but into the different bucket, not into the same bucket. So another one is the object URL, because it's the URL based storage. You will get the, as soon as you upload the objects into the Amazon S3, you are you will see one URL to retrieve those particular objects. So it's the object based. So S3 is a storage for the internet, and every Amazon S3 objects can be addressed by a unique URL form using the web service endpoint, the bucket name, and the object key. It's look like this, like the HTTP, then my bucket name, that's my S3, then service name, then my file name here. Okay, so that's how it's look like. So for convenience, the Amazon S3 console and the prefix and delimiter features allow you to navigate within Amazon S3 bucket, and if there were a folder hierarchy. However, remember that a bucket is a single flat namespace of keys with no structure. And Amazon S3 operations, let's see. Let's say it's basically, it's very handful of common operations. Let's say it's included like the to create and delete a bucket, write an object, you can read an object, you can delete an object, you can list keys in a buckets. So these are most common operations in S3. So another one is, next one is the REST interface. It's the native interface for Amazon S3. Is a REST. So REST is stands for the representational state transfer API. And with the REST interface, you use the standard HTTP or HTTPS request to create or delete the buckets, and list the keys, read and write the objects. Okay, so that's you can use by REST interface. So REST also maps the standard HTTP verbs to the familiar CRUD operations. CRUD, CRUD, that's the create, read, update, and delete operations. Create is basically, create is HTTP put. It's basically, and sometimes post, and read is HTTP get, and delete is HTTP delete, and update is HTTP pause. So always use HTTPS for S3 API request to ensure that your requests and data are secure. And durability and the availability. So data durability and the availability are related, but the slightly different concepts. So durability address the questions like, will my data still be there in the future? And the availability is to address the questions, let's say, the can I access my data right now? I mean, if there is no downtime and I can access my data at any time without any without any downtime. So S3 is designed to provide both very high durability and very high availability for your data. Amazon S3, it's a standard storage. One of type of the S3, that is the standard storage, is designed for 99.999999. If you count, these are the 11.9 durability and the 4.9 the availability of objects over a given year. So let's say if you store 10,000 objects with Amazon S3, so you can on average expect to incur a loss of a single object once every 1 million years. And Amazon S3 achieves high availability by automatically storing data redundantly on multiple devices in multiple facilities within a single region. So that's it's provide you the redundant data. So it is designed to sustain the concurrent loss of data in two facilities without loss of user data. So it's replicate the data into at least three buckets, sorry, into the three facilities within the single region. So if there is some issue with two facilities, then still you be able to access your data. So Amazon S3 provides a very highly durable storage infrastructure designed basically for the mission critical and the primary data storage. So let's move. And next is the data consistency. Yeah, consistency also the very important questions. And S3, it's an eventual consistent system. It's not the consistent system, but the eventually consistent system. You will get your data eventually consistent, and because your data is automatically the replicated across the multiple server and the locations within a region. So changes in your data, it might take some time to propagate to all the locations, but it's gonna be consistent eventually. And as a result, there are some situations where the information that you read immediately after an update may return the stale data. And for put to new objects, this is not a concern, so just keep in mind it's just for um, to change some changes in your data. But when you are putting the new objects into S3, that's not the eventual consistent. It's there is another scenario where you can keep in mind. Let's say S3 provides the read after write consistency. There is no eventual consistency for your put new objects. It's read after write consistency. You just put your data into the buckets and you get the data exact in the same format as you uh, put the objects. So however, for put to existing objects, object basically overwrite to an existing key, and for object deletes, Amazon S3 provides eventual consistency. So eventual consistency means that if you put new data to an existing key, a subsequent get might return the old data. Similarly, if you delete an object, a subsequent get for that particular objects might still read the deleted objects. In all cases, updates to a single key are atomic. For eventual consistent reads, you will get the new data or the old data, but never an inconsistent mix of data. So it's give you the guarantee you will not get the inconsistent data. Eventually it you will get the consistent data. So another one is the access control. So Amazon S3, it's a secure by default. When you create a bucket or object in S3, you only you have access. It's going to be blocked for the public access. It's only you are the only one who can access your S3 bucket. To allow you to give control access to others, you have to provide both coarse grain access control and the fine grain access control. Amazon S3 ACLs allows you to grant certain course granted permissions like read, write, or full control at the object or the bucket level. And ACLs are best used today for a limited set of use cases, such as enabling bucket logging or making a bucket that hosts a static website be word readable. So, and Amazon S3 bucket policies are the recommended access control mechanism for S3 and provide much fine-grained control. Using an Amazon S3 bucket policy, you can specify who can access your bucket, from where. You can specify the CIDR block or the IP address, and during what time of the day. So as we discussed earlier, the most used common cases for S3 bucket. So we can also host our static website. S3 can be used to host your static website. To host a static website, you just simply configure a bucket for website hosting and then upload the content of your static website to the buckets. And to configure an Amazon S3 bucket for your website hosting, just you need to create a bucket with the same name as the desired website host name, then upload the static file to bucket, make all file publics, enable static website hosting for bucket, and include specifying the index documents and an error documents in case there is some error into your website. So it will redirect to your error documents, and the website will now be available at your S3 website URL. First it would be your bucket name, then .s3, then website, then AWS region, and then your Amazon the aws.com, your website name. So create a friendly DNS name in your own domain for the website using a DNS CNAME or an Amazon Route 53 alias that resolve to Amazon S3 website URL, and then website will be now available for at your website domain name. Okay, so that's how you can create the static website. Okay, guys, thank you.